Hey gang, Ronan here. Welcome on back to the Cade and another episode, our 50th in this series, called Sports Saturday. And that also coincides with us hitting another milestone earlier in the week of marking 300 episodes of overall content we posted on this pokey little channel. Since we started back, guess to be about 3 years ago at least, and that's with a break of almost 18 months smack in the middle. But we are here, we've made it this far, and because we are less than 50 days out from the start of the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris, France, I figure what better opportunity to go back and revisit one of my favorite NES games from the late 1980s, and it's actually the first time we've run a sequel along with the original game in a series that we've done full stop. We, of course, did the original track and field earlier on in this series, and that's from 1985. We did the NES version of that, and we're going to do Konami's Track and Field 2. Now, this game is one of my absolute favorite sports games to this day, which is weird saying that about a game like this, because Olympic games, historically, one, are not very popular, and two, they only are released during Olympic years. Summer Olympics happen every 4 years. Winter Olympics used to happen every 4 years. Now they happen every two. So now they offset. But what we're going to do for this episode is we're going to do what's called training mode. There's 3 modes in this game. There's a versus mode where you can play against another player. Olympic mode is basically the storyline mode where you can pick a country, and I think if I remember right, there's 15 countries to choose from. And you go through all the events, and you try and medal, and you have different athletes, and that's the long and the short of it. And then training mode allows you to do each one individually. So we're going to do training mode for 2 primary reasons. One, it allows us to do all 12 events. And 2, the Olympic mode is done in sections of 3. So, for example, the first 3 events you do are fencing, triple jump, and freestyle swimming. Then you get a password to save your game and save your progress. And then you can do 2 exhibition events. You do hang gliding and gun firing, which were never really all that interesting to me, and I usually skipped over them. But then you would do the next 3 events, high dive, pigeon shooting, hammer throw. Repeat that, get another password. Then do Taekwondo, pole vault, canoeing, another password, and then do archery, hurdles, and horizontal bar, and get another password. And that's basically how it works. In Olympic mode, you do each event twice. The first time you do to qualify, and then the second time you go through it is to decide where and if you get a medal or not. Whereas training mode, the criteria isn't so hard, and if I don't qualify for a particular event, that means I don't have to go all the way back to the beginning and start all over again. So we're just going to jump right in with fencing, and this event is actually really straightforward. As you see on the bottom, there's 5 gray squares below each fencer, and all I got to do is make sure I get to 5 before my opponent does. And that didn't help because he already got me with the first mark. Now you can parry and then attack. Use the B button to parry, the A button to lunge and attack. And you can go high, as you see, if you press up on the controller, you can go up high for an attack, or you can go straight in with a regular attack and just hit A, or you can go low and try and go for the lower torso and hit A as well. But this event is not particularly hard. And to be fair, the computer can give you more of a challenge sometimes than you anticipate. But by and large, I've never had really any issue getting through this first event. Now, you have 6 minutes to finish it. I've rarely taken more than 2 minutes to get through it. And then at the end of each event, you get this printout on your typewriter here that tells you how you did. Now, the one big thing about this game that I will stress is, and I'm going to pause it here really quick just to turn the music down, is that if you played this game back in the day on the Nintendo Entertainment System and you played it on the conventional controller, that means the 2-button controller with the A and the B button and the 4-function D-pad, this game was an absolute nightmare to play because you needed to be able to hit the buttons so hard in order to generate the power you need for events like this that more often than not, it was pointless to try and play it on a standard controller. It really was. What you needed back in the day was a controller that was called the NES Advantage. And the NES Advantage, you can look it up on Google, it's not hard to find, was a big brick of a controller. And it looked the closest thing to a standard fighting cabinet controller that the NES ever got. So you had two really big buttons that were your A and B button. And above them, they had two smaller buttons that you could press, and that activated the turbo function on those buttons. So you didn't have to mash them. All you had to do was hold it down, and you could crank it and make the characters in this game move a lot faster than they normally would, which I'll demonstrate presently. The other thing that the NES Advantage had is it had a proper joystick, which you needed, as I said, and I'll show it as we go, in this game if you wanted to enjoy it at all. It doesn't make it it makes it less challenging, I should say, but it actually makes the game playable. And in going through and looking up for reviews on this game, which were in really, really short supply, the only review for this game I found was from a website called classicgames.net. And it doesn't have a proper name for who it was that posted this article, but it was back in 2019. And the first thing they said was there were a few games that frustrated me as much as Track and Field 2. I absolutely adore the original, but this game was too complicated at times, much to its detriment. And I'm inclined to agree with that. So what we'll do here is we'll get back into the game. And for this event, all you have to do, if the turbo button works, then all you gotta do is just hold down the A button. And as you can see, my guy is booking. I don't have to mash the button. And as soon as I get to the line, tap the B button. And as long as my foot is behind that line, then I can do the triple jump. Now, each time I land, I've got to push it again and give myself another hop. And because we're doing training mode, the qualification criteria is only 12 meters. So I went way past that. So now I can completely bomb the next two jumps, and I'll be fine, because as long as you qualify once, you're okay. But the trick to this one is trying to keep your jumps fairly uniform in height, with your last one being a little bit higher than it can afford to be. So you want to start at like 35 to 45 degrees in your first jump, be about 40 to 45 degrees in your second jump, and then about 40 to 45 degrees on your third jump. And you can absolutely crush this event. It's really not hard if you've got a controller that can handle it. Now, luckily, I can play it nowadays on an emulator. I'm using Nestopia as this emulator, because I also found out that depending on the emulator you pick for this game, the turbo buttons don't always work. And I say that as a caveat to anybody who wants to try this out. I tried this on Messen, I tried it on JNES, and I tried it on FCEUX. And all three of them had the same glitch, in that when you go from the triple jump to this event, freestyle swimming, for some reason the turbos don't work. And I'm hoping, as we get ready to do this event, that the turbo will work, because this is where it comes in handy. And once again, it glitched out. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick soft reset. Because in order to really successfully get through freestyle swimming, you need the turbo to work. Otherwise, it's nigh on impossible. Because you've got to alternate somehow between using the A and the B button, but the way they time it is so ham-fisted. Whereas if it works, you just hold it down and you go. And the trick here is to let off the B button, coast through, and then pop back up before you run out of air, which is the green bar, and the blue bar is your speed. And as you can see, I can do this in 36 seconds. So that is something I gotta warn you, depending on which emulator you use. Again, I'm using Nestopia for this one. If you want to try this game out. Now, I played this game so much back in the day that I used to keep records of all the countries and all the athletes on each one to see how I did. I had like world records and everything. Like, I don't get that crazy into games that often, but I did for this one for some reason. Now, the high dive, this one isn't that difficult. You just got to be able to get it so you can do well enough on your dive that you do better than a 5.0. So I've already done that. I got an 8.8. So if you hold the A button down, you can switch between what type of dive you want to do. Now, you can only do each dive once, and you get 4 attempts. And then the B button is what sets off the diver, and then it's a matter of using the D-pad to control if you want to do like twists, if you want to do different spins and whatnot. And then the goal is obviously to land as close to pure vertical in the pool as possible. So as we try it here, I went in a little back heavy and I only got a 4.7 out of that. And that's how we only got 1.9. We got barely a 2 because I wasn't able to get any really good twists. So if you go to the left, you do what's like the pike position is what I was trying to say, where you're basically touching your toes as you're going through the air. And then if you push the stick to the right, you do the really tight curls as you're going down. So like so. And we got a 5.3. So the 8.8 is still good enough for us to qualify. And as I said, in Olympic mode, the criteria to qualify for each event is higher. So the degree of difficulty is greater. But you still only get so many attempts to do it. Now this event right here, clay pigeon shooting, is the absolute bane of my existence. And it was the bane of my existence in the original track and field. And it is in this one. Because what you've got to be able to do is you've got to be able to pick off, as you see the qualification window, is 25 out of 40. And if I can pull this off first try, I'll be impressed. Because what you have to do is the pigeons are going to come out at different angles and going in different directions. You've got to anticipate where they go. And obviously, when your targeting reticle lines up with it, blow it out of the sky. So you hit the B button in order to, and you get 2 shots with your shotgun. So you got to be careful about when you hit the trigger. But you hit the B button to launch the pigeon, and then you just move the reticle over like I just did. And this is one, if you want to try this out, this is easily the event that's going to drive you up the wall until you get it right. Especially in Olympic mode. Because the criteria to qualify is 32 out of 40, which means you can only miss 8 overall. Now, what you have to learn is you've got to kind of lead the pigeons along. And I missed that one. And don't hit the turbo button with it because that will cause you to fire both shots at once. For this, you want to use the standard buttons. But I'm actually doing fairly good for this first rack. And sometimes when they launch really close to you, if you can get the reticle over fast enough, you can just pick them off before they go too far out. So we got 6 out of 10 on the first one, which isn't great. We got our first 2 here. That's 3. That's 5. That's good. And as you see, the targeting reticle is actually fairly big. But the hitbox can be frustratingly narrow. So we got 9 out of 10 there. So we're already more than halfway home, which is good. So I can afford to miss 5 on the next one and 5 on the last one and still qualify. Not that I want to. Alright, we got 2. And there are ones that will go straight up the pipe at you, and those are just gimmies. Alright, so in this last rack, as long as we hit 4 of them, we're fine. Alright, we just need 2. There we go, there's our 4. We got 28 out of 40, which, to be honest, for not having played this game in a really long time, that's not bad. I figure if I give myself another 5-6 times going through that, I can figure it out pretty easily. So now we get to the hammer throwing. This is where the joystick function on the NES Advantage came in really handy. Because what you got to do is you basically would have to put your palm of your hand on the joystick, put the controller lengthwise on your leg, and then spin the guy around. And when you see him flash, that's when you can let it go. So I was close. And like the triple jump, you got to be able to hold the button down, but you got to be quick about it in order to get... There we go. That's in the ag bay. So I only had to go 40 meters. This thing's going 75. 76.48. But this one, in particular, if you tried to do this on the conventional Nintendo controller with the D-pad, forget it. Because no matter how many times you rotated your thumbs around that pad, it was never enough torque to be able to get the hammer to go anywhere near what you needed to qualify. And more often than not, you risked, and I'm not kidding, you risked either breaking your thumb or giving yourself a severe blister by just trying to mash it to be able to go. Now, Taekwondo is like fencing, in that all you have to do is beat your opponent, and you see each of us have a blue life bar. And in this one, kicks, being Taekwondo, are obviously going to be your friend. So B button is kick, A button is punch. And all I would do is just do those roundhouse kicks like that, and you just saw I chopped down a whole heck of a lot of his life. Now, it's very easy to do the same to me. And if you push up on the joystick, you will jump up in the air. You don't have to hit an extra button to jump. But this is like a rudimentary fighting game at its best. And just like that, he is out. Now, if you run out of time before you knock your opponent out, if you have more health than they do at the end of time, at the end of the clock, then you win. So you have two ways to win, but ideally, you want to knock your opponent out. Now, I will warn you if you try this on. Like I said, your opponent can hit you with a shot and do the exact same thing to you and just completely cut out the amount of life that you have. Now, the pole vault is like the triple jump in that it's all relegated by the turbo button and hitting B to initiate the jump. This one is probably the most tedious of the bunch. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the qualifying height to 5 meters because it'll show you how easy it is. The criteria to qualify is 4 meters, 0.8. But I'm just going to go for a straight 5. And all you got to do is run down the lane, and you will see it will pan over, and a blue tip will show up at the end of the pole. And when it gets over the slot, you just got to let go of the B, hit A, and then... Or let go of A, hit B. And as long as you hold it down, if you've got enough power, it will sling you right over the bar. And you've really got to try hard to not qualify that way. But if you're quick on it and you don't get right over that slot, then that's a foul. Now, I've already hit 5 meters, so I'm good no matter what happens here. But in this event, I could probably get upwards. I can get to the top of the bar within a couple of tries, and then inevitably you get to a stage where you just cannot help it, and you knock the bar off. But you could truly do this for like 10 minutes using a NES Advantage controller. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run him straight into the cushion, which is an automatic foul, because you get 3 tries, and every time you clear the bar, it resets it. But that way we'll accelerate this along. But that's all there is to the pole vault. But again, doing this on a standard controller was a nightmare. Because you're mashing the A button trying to get enough speed, and then by the time you get to the pit to be able to set the pole down, you've lost so much because you're mashing the button so hard that trying to get above that amount was really tough. Now, this, being canoeing, is really a matter of pattern recognition and understanding what's going on. So, your B button gets you moving. And you want to back up and hit the A button. And you got to keep in mind what the gates are. Now, if you see an R here, that means you've got to go in backwards, which is reversed. Now, this one here is that you've got to go in this way. You've got to go around and into it. And you back up and go that way. And these are straight on. Whoop. Come on. Now, there's 16 gates you have to go through. Now, this is a tricky one right here because you've got to go around this island. And straighten yourself back out. Go through this last gate. Get across the finish line. As long as you get there in an amount of time and you don't get many penalties, you get 30-second penalties for each one you go through wrong. And then it gives you this checklist of everything you did. And as long as you do that and you do it in a reasonable amount of time, this one's really hard not to pass. Now, we'll have to do it again, which will give me a chance to kind of show you if you can do it a little bit quicker. So again, A is your forward. And the trick here is you got to go in sequence. So you got to go back in through 3, back it up, and go through 4. And because you've already gone through gate 3, that works. You don't get a foul for that. Now you go in reverse through this one. Now these are straightforward because you go right through 10, right through 11. Go this way through 12. Back it up through 13. We go straight through 14. Now hit the brakes, because we got to go around to go through 15. This way through 16. As you can see, I did it under 2 minutes. And the course never changes. It's just a matter of remembering what gate is where, and then being able to steer your canoeist through each one successfully. And then you're all set. So now we go to archery. And archery is one of my favorite ones. Now you have 3 shots at each of the different lengths up top. So you have 30, 50, 70, and 90. And you have to treat each one differently. Now the big thing you want to worry about in this is wind. So if you pull up your bow, then what you have to do is you look at the way the wind is blowing, and you have to go the opposing direction half as far. So the wind's blowing 7 meters to my left. I want to go 3 meters to the right. And then when you pull up the power on this, you want to let it go about there, about halfway. And you're pretty close to a bullseye. Now you only need 50 points to qualify. And the wind is blowing right at me now, so I don't need to adjust the angle too much one way or the other, but I got to make sure I have a little bit more oomph. And you know when you get a bullseye because of that little musical cue. So now the wind is blowing 15 miles an hour in a tailwind, which means I really need to tone down the power on this. So I can drop it down to about there, and I still get a bullseye. So I'm already halfway to 50. So now I'm at 50 meters, and I've got 1 mile an hour going to my left. I don't really need to adjust anything. And I can let this go, and I'm a little high. So you can let off the power a little bit. Right about there. And this should be a bullseye. Yep. So I'm already at 46, and I got 1 more arrow to go, and now the wind is blowing straight at me at 9 miles an hour. And this should be more than enough to get it there. So I've got 28 on the first set, 25 on the second set. So now that we're at 70 meters, we have to start aiming up a little bit. Although we've got a tailwind. Wind is at our back, so the arrow's got to carry a little further. This should be more than enough to get it there. Yep, that's bullseye. And once you figure out literally the mathematics on this, it's not that hard. And as long as you can keep it in the vicinity of the bullseye, it's not hard to get. The points you need to qualify. Oh, and I didn't let this one go high enough. I'm a beaten beast. Whoa, that barely hit the target. I didn't realize I was at 90. So the wind is blowing 15 miles an hour going right, which means I need to move this over to about 7 or 8. And then at 90 meters, what you need to do is you need to go up about 7 degrees. Because that way you give it enough loft that it will go all the way down. And as you see up top, it's going fairly straight. And that's money. So we got 1 more arrow. We'll do the same thing. We'll go right about there. You see that arrow is going nice and straight. And we have managed to get a bullseye. So we got 101 when we only needed 50 to qualify. So now we have to do hurdles, which is similar to doing the long jump and the pole vault, or the triple jump and the pole vault. What you have to worry about here is not jumping the gun. And it will kind of play with you a little bit. So this is like an old-fashioned steeplechase where you got to get close to the hurdle and not get clipped by it. Oops, she got taken out. I think we're going to get it. Did we get it? Yes, we did. And as long as you beat the qualification time of 3 minutes, you're fine. But really, it's just a matter of holding down the turbo A button and timing your jumps right so you clear the hurdle. And as long as you don't go too far into the water, it doesn't slow you down that much. Now, the horizontal bar is a weird one, because this is a case of you really just hold down the A and the B button and then just let it do its thing. So you've got max power, and all you need to be able to do is qualify. And the trick is going to be being able to pull off enough stuff to impress the judges, and then when you do the dismount, that's going to be the real kicker. And you'll be able to do certain amounts of exercises from the bar, and then you will see where it will inevitably come up with finish. And when you do that, what you want to do is you want to let go of the turbo button as soon as you can and let your power drop down so you stick the landing. Because sticking the landing is critical in this. So we'll see how we did. Horizontal bar, 7.7. So we met the qualification criteria, and then we would move on to the next event. And really, that's the entire game. So I'm going to pause it right here, because at this point we could cycle through it again. Now, if we were doing it in Olympic mode, once we went through the first batch of events and qualified for all of them, as we go through it the second time, depending on how we do, would determine whether we get a bronze, silver, gold medal, or even if we qualify for a medal at all. And that's really the long and the short of the game. Like I said, the fun for me in this was, as a kid, kind of creating my own little Olympic world, for lack of a better term. Like I said, each event and each country has a different athlete doing said event. So it's not the same person doing fencing as saying doing the triple jump as saying doing canoeing. So you can kind of keep track of who is doing what. And like I said, what I like to do was I would see how I did in each event from each country and would take like the best time and go, okay, well, that's the world record. And I would take the second best time and say that's the Olympic record. I mean, because that was what I remember watching the Olympics as a kid. And again, I'm not a huge sports guy, but for whatever reason, it was something about this game that really fostered that in my imagination. To the point where every time I sit down and I play this, I remember all that. Would I ever do that again? I doubt it, but it is one of those little nostalgic things that I do find kind of quirky about how I grew up, both as a kid and as a gamer. Is this a good game? It is if you have the means to play it the way it needs to be played. Like I said, I'm playing this right now on the Nestopia emulator with an Xbox One controller that I have plugged into my PC. Back in the day, if you wanted to play this at all and have fun with it, you had to have the NES Advantage controller. Playing it on a standard NES controller, I'm not kidding, was pointless. You could maybe do one or two events and get through it. Doing the whole thing, I guarantee you, controllers got smashed by people who were trying to play this game with a standard NES controller and found out just how hard it was. Is this a game they can make today? Yeah, and I have no doubt that they're going to make one for the 2024 Olympics, as they've done for pretty much every Olympics that has come out since 1984-85 with Hypersports. You know, Konami kind of set the trend for doing that in terms of video games, and then by the 90s that started going over as we switched from the 16-bit consoles to the 32-bit consoles and so on. Different companies picked up doing that, especially since Konami doesn't really make games anymore. The issue, though, is that, again, who is the sort of person that is going to shell out the money to play a modern version of this when it inevitably comes out before the end of the year. The IOC thinks they're going to make a killing on this stuff like they do with everything Olympics related. And I'm sure there are people out there in the world who like playing these games. And I don't begrudge you for doing that. But it's not going to be a huge seller. And really, it's a game you may play once, maybe twice. And then when the Olympics go away, like everything else, our general interest in Olympic sports goes with it. And that's just kind of how societal nature works. We don't think about the Olympics until the Olympics come back around in 4 years. So, again, do I anticipate I'm going to see an Olympics game in my local game shop or seeing it advertised on PlayStation Network or on Xbox Live? Probably. I'd probably see it on Steam. Does it mean I'm going to buy it? Doubt it. You know, this was very much a game of its time, and it suited the purpose of its time. It's a game I can play and look back with a fair amount of nostalgia, but I freely admit I'm in the minority in that respect. A lot of people will look at this game and have no nostalgia for it whatsoever. So, if you're a sort of person who is nostalgic about it, let me know what your experience is. If you're a person who had played it back in the day and, again, like I said, had all sorts of trouble, let me know as well. I want to know what your experience with a game like this is, because it's one where it flew under the radar for a long time, but then when we started talking about games that really were ones that people were like kind of hidden gems on the NES, it's surprising how many people talk about games like Track and Field 2. So, you know, I find it one, it's more of a guilty pleasure for me, but in that respect of when I play it, I don't really feel guilty about it at all. So, again, that's Sports Saturday for this week. And programming note, going forward, now that we've hit 50 episodes on this series, we're going to go in a slightly different direction with it starting next week, where we are going to pick one game, and it is going to be an NFL football game, and we're going to go through a full season with it. Similar to what we're doing with our playthroughs for Metal Gear Solid, which I hope you guys are tuning into as well. And we're just going to see how well we can do over the course of a year. Playing as one team and see what we can do in like a franchise mode. Because there's games out there still, NFL games, that you can do that with from, you know, the fourth, fifth, and sixth generation especially. But I want to be able to get back into that sort of thing and enjoy a lot of what I like to play about those types of games. And it's one where I think it'll be fun content. Also because some of our more popular Sports Saturday episodes were NFL games when we were trying to do something of that sort. So we will start doing that with episode 51 next week. Of course, we will have Sucker Punch Sunday tomorrow, where we'll play a classic fighting or fighting platform-based game from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. The format for that is not going to change, because there's still ample amounts of those games that I have yet to dive into, so we'll keep that going for as long as we can. If you've been enjoying the content, as always, hit the like button, subscribe if you are new, and ring the bell to be notified of new episodes as they come out. And be sure to follow us on social media through Instagram and Threads at Ronan's Retrocade. Help spread the word about us so we can continue to grow our subscriber base and make this channel bigger and better. But that's enough for a Sunday. I've chatted enough. My name is Ronan. It's been great to spend this Saturday with you. Be safe, be well, happy gaming. Stay cool out there, by the way. It is hot in a lot of the world. And we will talk to you tomorrow for Sucker Punch Sunday. Bye.